Hey everybody, this is Eddy Dacius. We're here with another episode. We're excited for this guest. Her name is Jessica Sanon. Jessica Sanon. She will be here with us talking about her journey, and we're gonna learn something or two from her journey. But before, let's give a shout out to our sponsor. We have This Day Design. Design. If you need a website, it's 2020, so you probably do. Check out our newest sponsor, This Day Design. So they build a website for coaches and consultants using a straightforward client extraction. You can call them 857-241-9955. 857-241-9955. If you need a website, you definitely have to call them. And also, this episode is brought to you by Dacius Facility Management. Dacius Facility Management, they will manage your property with a variety of services. Call them now, 617-237-0106, or go online at daciusfm.com. daciusfm.com. Like we said, we have Jessica Sano with us. She has worked across various disciplines and has experience in client management, program and business development, organizational assessment, and project management. She is a pioneer in the community. She started her own business. She's a founder and CEO of Systemic Flow, and that's not my word. She gonna tell us more about her. So let's make sure we have Jessica with us today, and we appreciate her to be here with us. Like I said, this is Divine Purpose Podcast with our newest guest, a special guest today, Jessica Sano. How are you today?
Doing well. Thank you so much for having me today.
Nah, thank you for being here with us. So, like we said, if you follow us, we have a simple question. So, that question, some people say it's a loaded question, but it's simple for us. What can you tell us about you today?
Ooh, what can I say? That is a loaded question. So for me, thank you so much for the introduction. Again, my name is Jessica Sanon. I am a business owner. I am the third of four children, the first daughter. And I say this just because in my culture, that is a lot of pressure for someone like myself. Born and raised in Boston. Typically, I've asked my friends, what are three things or three words that they would say about me? And they said that I'm goofy, I'm giving, and resourceful. I think
Oh,
goofy
wow.
comes Yeah, I think goofy comes from growing up. I was just kind of socially awkward and I kind of had to find ways to engage and have conversations with people. And so
Okay.
my goofiness oftentimes come out. I love giving back to the community. I love
Yes.
volunteerism, all of that. So anything revolving that is what I love to do. And I guess resourceful because there's just so many resources out there, so much goodness and richness and information. And so why not try to indulge and see how we can best access these resources to make things more accessible and equitable in our community.
Oh, wow, wow, that's great, and thank you for sharing. So we like to kind of dive a little bit further in our conversation. Like I said, this is a journey. So the question, it's up to you. You're gonna take us to that journey. So one way we like to, you say a keyword. You said that you were a little bit awkward when you said when you were little. Like, can you kind of explain the reason we like to know more is because we might have somebody listening to us, watching us, and who might be in the same position. So, how did you identify it? How did you get out of it?
Yeah, it's a really good question. Just piggybacking on what I mentioned about being the first daughter in a Haitian culture, there was just so much pressure to do what I was told to do, and so oftentimes I didn't really talk. I didn't really talk back. It was either a yes or no. So growing up, I already had some kind of setbacks in terms of being able to verbally speak to people, and
Yeah.
I was super shy and timid because of that, and so I say that I'm socially awkward because sometimes I really don't know how to interact with people.
Okay.
And I will say that like the pandemic has made it quite difficult because I would say before the pandemic and being in person, I was able to read people. So even though I was super quiet growing up, I was super observant in my environment, the people around me and things. And so I was able to kind of figure out, people based on, how they came or presented themselves. And so that has kind of been my backing as far as how to kind of segue through social awkwardness, and then also challenging myself to attend certain events or social gatherings where, I'll literally do my homework the night before or something to kind of figure out those, I guess, conversation starters I would want to have with someone so that I don't feel awkward.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's me. And I think oftentimes there's this conversation between introverted and extroverted. I am a very introverted person. Literally, this podcast right now, I kid you not, right after this, I'm gonna have
Nah, you're doing good. You're doing good. So let's talk mostly about your upbringing. So talk about your family dynamic. Talk about your parents. Were you born here, or like take us to that journey for them and then for you in terms of your household dynamic.
Yes. So I was born and raised in Boston. Both my parents are from Haiti. My mom is from Caballé, and my father is from Port-au-Prince. My dad and my mom both are the youngest in their family.
Wow.
So my dad had, I think, about 10 siblings, and my mom perhaps had like around 4 or 5. And I would say for her, she still has one of her brothers back in Haiti, whereas my dad has most of his family here in Boston.
Okay.
Yeah, so I have a very large family from my dad's side. So all of my cousins, all of my aunts, you name it, they're here. I grew up in Dorchester for most of my life, and then moved out to more of the suburban area in Boston. And I would say that I was very fortunate where I was raised, because I didn't realize my mom was such a, my mom was such a badass in the sense that like I was able to grow up.
Jessica, I think most Haitian parents, especially their mom, they don't play around, right? So don't feel bad, because that was my case too. So she was the badass in the family.
I appreciate it. But she was like, the first home that I remember ever living in, we owned. And my parents were very, very family centered. And so they gave me everything that I needed, like in terms of school. When I went to go get my bachelor's in math, when I got my MBA, like my mom and my dad supported me 100%. And so definitely that aspect of who I am in terms of giving back to my community, being very family oriented, I definitely would say that came from my parents for sure. But then it had some flip sides, like coming to America, you're new here. There were a lot of like cultural differences that I definitely wasn't aware. And so oftentimes I would compare myself to my classmates who were either white, Black American, African American, you name it, who like had different kinds of ways that they were socially interacting with people. So, I would go to class and people are like, yeah, let's go to Cindy's birthday party, or like, let's go and over. And I would tell my parents like, yes, I want to go to the sleepover. And they're like, no, who do you think you are? But those small little things, it was just super confusing. And so oftentimes when I talked about like that social awkwardness, oftentimes I think it came from like those kind of cultural differences of not necessarily understanding or what I needed to be aware of when I was interacting with other people. But I would say over time, of course, like as you get older, my parents are now like my best friends. And so I can kind of have conversations with them right now than I wouldn't have growing up. And I think because, again, being the first first daughter, I have 2 older brothers and a younger sister. There was just so much pressure again on me to kind of to excel, to be someone that they can rely on for sure. But I think again, growing up as I got older, they realized that there were just certain things culturally that when you take from Haiti, it's just really hard to kind of root in Boston for sure.
So, can you talk about your favorite childhood memory?
So there's so many childhood memories. The one that I would say, and I don't know, Eddy, why this is. I kid you not. Every single time we wanted to go to BJ's, or the store used to be called Building 19, literally
Okay.
it wasn't just my family. My aunties came, my
Yeah.
grandmother came, my uncles came, my cousins. It was just like the norm. Every Saturday
Yeah.
when we went out grocery shopping, it was like such a family
Same
oriented.
here. Yes.
And it was like, and now I feel like I go to the grocery store just to rush and get things that I need. But when I was growing up, it was
Yeah.
literally took 2-3 hours in the store just to pick out 5 things, right? Like I miss having that family feel of being able to go somewhere and really having a good time, like just picking things out for your family and things like that. So I would say like just the family gatherings is the stuff that I remember most, and actually is the stuff that I really miss the most because we don't do it as often as we should.
So, and thank you for this story about your favorite childhood memory. And I feel like most people, especially Haitian, we like to be together. We like to be as a family, like a big family, and we like this type of outing. And I feel like this is like a common ground in terms of what Haitian do to develop and to have multiple family members always with them. So let's talk about what was your dream job in high school, in college, and now. So I like, if you follow us on this podcast, the BIPOC we like to see if there was any change in terms of, when you were little, you wanted to be a doctor, I'm saying. And then you say, doctor is too hard, or I want to be this. So take us to your journey in terms of what was your dream job when you were growing up.
So let me take it back to elementary school. When I was in elementary school, I wanted to be a chef. I either wanted to be a chef or I wanted to be a singer.
Okay.
And part of the reason again, one thing you mentioned in terms of the Haitian culture being with family, we also love food. And so I was always in the kitchen prepping food with my mom. And I was like, maybe I could do this for a living.
Yeah.
But then over time, I had a passion for math, which really ties into what I do right now. But part of the reason why I loved math so much growing up is because that was actually my universal language. So when I talked about awkwardness and being shy and not being able to really speak and having conversations with people at a young age, that actually influenced my kind of educational journey, where I needed to find that one class that I was really good at, because English was just so difficult for me in terms of how I was translating stuff from Creole to English.
Yeah.
Math happened to be that favorite subject. Like I didn't have to explain anything to anyone, and you know the case. And so when I was in high school, I actually wanted to be a math teacher and decided to major in math when I was in college. And it turns out that you could do so many different things with math. And I was like, maybe I'll be an actuary instead, because there was a specific, track in my math degree where I could become an actuarial science, what it was called. But I struggled so hard with math. Like, I was coming into college with a high head of like, oh my goodness, I'm so good at math. This is going to be so easy. And then I get to college and I literally failed Calculus 1, and I struggled so hard just to get my degree.
What? Really?
Yeah, I did. And fortunately I got it, right? But the moment I got it, I questioned whether I had the ability to be a math teacher. I questioned my ability, whether I could be an actuary, because actuaries, you have to take exams every year. And I was like, oh my gosh, if I'm already failing, barely passing my math classes, how can I take all these yearly exams for an actuary? And so instead of doing my passion for teaching or actuarial science, I decided to do a year of service at Upward Bound, where I did a lot of stuff in education and career advancement and things like that.
Okay. So,
then,
go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm glad you say you struggle with math. And can you tell us what are the 3 most challenging events in your life, and how do they challenge you?
Yeah. So couple of events that happened. One, I would say, again, going back to what I experienced in my childhood as far as being the best for my family and being the person who's most resourceful, I definitely had a couple of mental breakdowns from the time I was in grad school up until maybe 2019 or 2018, one of those years, where I was hospitalized a couple of times for several days, just because I pretty much didn't allow my body to rest. I was always on the go, 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 go. And so those were very troubling because for me at that time, I took it as, wow, I'm super weak. I'm not able to fulfill whatever kinds of, obligations I had at the time. I definitely felt like I was a weakling. But over time, I realized, obviously, when it comes to your body and your presence and who you are, you can't be everything to everyone. And so one of the challenges through that was trying to overcome how I perceive myself, but then also show people that I'm only human, right? I was working with women. And I was like, no, I definitely need to pause and I definitely need to rest. Also, I try to put so much on me. And so now I'm doing a lot better with kind of venturing out and asking for help when needed and being a lot more intentional about how I spend my time. Related to the mental health breakdown, I would say part of a challenge that I have, and it's always going to be a challenge, is being able to say no.
Yes, I know.
Especially in our culture.
Yeah, that's tough.
It's so tough, right? I also go to church, and so I have a lot of gamun, like older women and men who are always like, you got to do this, that, and third. Like, you have to help your community. You need to do this. You need to do that. And I'm sitting here like, no, I don't. How do you say that in such polite terms? I'm still trying to figure that kind of balance out. Are like probably my top two challenges. And then I would say the final one, and again, I'm still kind of going through this, is understanding who I am. So as I mentioned, it was hard for me to have conversations with people. English was really difficult for me to do. So oftentimes I would just mimic what other people said, how other people kind of responded, how other people showed up. And over time, I'm realizing like, this isn't Jessica. It took me a while, right? Right now, I'm like 29 years old. I'm going to say it out there. I don't care. 29 years old, and I'm still trying to figure out who I am. And little by little, I'm taking steps to understand that more and more, but then also inviting people to know who I am. Before I was just hiding. And because I was hiding, people didn't really know me. But now that I'm like trying to be more authentically myself and being present in who I am, I'm starting to kind of pivot and see who are the people that's actually in my circle, who are the people that I can definitely rely on, and who are the people that I know will support me at the end. So all in all, loving myself, I would say, is like the of all of that.
No, and this is great, and I think you should be proud to what you have accomplished. And so, I have two questions. I'm gonna piggyback on what you just said about learn to say no and learning to love yourself, right? But before that, how is your family support? Because I know Haitian, they're gonna be there for us. They're gonna say they're gonna be helping us, but they're not telling us they love us. They're not telling us you did a good job. They're not telling us they are proud of us. Do you experience that, or do you share some? Can you tell us about that in terms of trying to change the culture?
Yeah, growing up, there was no I love yous. There was no sex. There was no tucking in there. My parents worked a whole lot, and so they didn't really have enough time to do those types of things. But I will say again, over time, and it could be because my parents, because they are the youngest in their family.
Yes.
And because I'm the third and my sister's the fourth child, like they've learned at an earlier stage compared to my aunts and uncles who are like in their 70s and 80s, that the way that they thought love is or how you should be interacting with your kids is so different.
Yes.
Exactly, than how it's perceived to be. And so nowadays, and I think the struggle with our culture comes from the fact that whenever you're talking to an adult, you always have to be the one to approach them. You are the one who has to kind of start the conversation
I
so
know.
that they understand how to respond. And so, again, growing up, it was a lot of me trying to teach and me having conversations without overstepping who I am to them. And inviting the conversation. So now they say I love you. My mom says, good job. I'm telling you, I'm on this podcast. She's like, good, Jessica. And I'm like, yes.
I'm glad you said that, because this is a transition. This is where it's like people are learning new things, because like we are tough, like in terms of Haitian, like our parents. But me growing up, this was a different case, because I found first person to say they love me. Even I get a beating. My mom, even she beat me. She got to, like she's telling me I was the one to force her to do it. But at the end of the day, I'm glad they're doing it, because this is very helpful for us, for our mental strength and confidence. So let's go. Go ahead.
It's just hard because I have been fortunate enough to visit my family in Haiti, and I can see it, like I can see those interactions still at play, and I am grateful and thankful that I'm in a place where my parents have the ability to grow and see different kinds of cultures and different ways that people are communicating with their family and their kids, know?
Yeah.
So I can say that for sure.
And so now you said you learn how to say no. Take me to that process, because I know it's a tough one, because they're gonna say, especially if you dealing with older Haitian, oh maledve, African, so tell me how was it for you?
Oh my gosh, it's still a battle. I don't think it's like a long lasting war. Like you can win battles here and there, but it's just going to be a journey hands down. And I would say oftentimes whenever I try to say no to the Gamuns, I don't know why. They make you feel bad. They make you feel like you're not.
I'm sorry if I'm laughing. It's just.
But it's true.
Yeah, it's true, man.
Feel so bad and you hurt inside, and you're trying to figure out like, how am I the bad person? Like, where did this come from? And you internalize that. Yeah. And because you're internalizing that, to your point of like self-love, oftentimes when I felt like I wasn't delivering or I wasn't good enough for someone, literally I would say to myself that, wow, I'm not the person that I thought I was, or it does affect that, like that self-acceptance and that self-love part that you are in that journey. But now, I mean, it depends so let me backtrack. Growing up, again, I say this all the time, I don't know why, but even though when I say no to a lot of the Gamuns, a lot of them love me. Love me. I don't know what it is about that. And so, but because of that, I've been able to build real connections and relationships with them. And so oftentimes I would definitely talk about what's on my plate. And then I also have my mom. I kid you not. There was one time I was a sister from my church asked if I can send money to her family at Western Union. And my mom was just like, oh, my daughter's not home, but, we'll talk to them later, blah, blah, blah. And then my mom's like, yeah, we're not calling her back. She has 2 daughters who is your age. And just take care of that. And lo and behold, the lady responded to my mom and she's like, you know what? My daughters took care of this and that's it. Right. Yeah. And so I've been able to get some kind of support from older people like my mom, who was able to kind of just tell people like, my daughter's busy. She doesn't have time for you. But again, going back to like building relationships, I've been able to build relationships with these people to the point where they know everything that's going on in my life. So if I say no, that I can't do something, they know I really cannot do it. Wow. Other times, if you're new to me, Sometimes, I'm trying to be better at just saying no and that's it. But right now I'm telling them no, and then I'm giving them an explanation as to why. And so those are some of the things that I'm learning to do. Other things that I realized about myself, sometimes people don't even ask you questions, right? So sometimes what they'll do is say, Jessica, I'm working on this and I hear you're really good at it. And before
Yeah.
I would respond like, oh yeah, I'll help you out. Don't worry about it. Now I'm being quiet, right? I'm waiting for the ask. I'm waiting
feeling the blank, because they want you, they started and they want you to fill the blank, and you stay put and they have to finish, right?
Yeah, for sure. So it's been a battle, but you pick and choose what you like, how you want to respond is what I'm learning, who I'm responding to, and then you can just build a relationship from there.
Makes sense. So let's go to, what is one piece of advice you will give to someone who's starting their career now?
I would say, that's a good question. If they're starting their career now, I would say try to be friends. Let me back this up.
Take your time.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out the best way to say this. If they're starting off their career, there's a couple of things that I think people could do, but the top thing would be to try to make as many colleagues as you can, not just people with a specific department, but cross-functionally. Because I know there will be times where you will need to work with another person, and it's better to try to foster and cultivate those relationships as soon as possible. Have a coffee conversation for 30 minutes with people once a month if you can, right? Trying to maintain those kinds of existing relationships, but then also start building your networks too externally, finding those mentors or people who can sponsor you at work so you can take the next leg up in your career. And then one other thing that I wish I did more of is to be honest, really understand when you're about to sign off on an offer letter, understand the salary commitment that they're giving you as well as your benefits, and try to weigh that out as best as you can, because only then will you be able to kind of advocate for yourself in the future when you have, your 3-month or 6-month kind of performance review, where you kind of ask for more. So those are my two quick, career advice.
Thank you for sharing. So, who has been your most important professional mentor?
Professional mentor, again, there's so many. I would say one person that comes to mind. Her name is Nicole Young, and I say this as she was my boss back at UMass Amherst, where I was working in the source is student registered organizations, long story short, student activities, that's what it was called. And to this day, she's still in my life. She's someone who has written recommendations letter for me. I wouldn't be able to attend graduate school without it. She has given job references for me, all of that. And of course, those are really great benefits. But literally, I could text her right now and she would drop everything that she needs to do in order to listen to me. So she is someone who is great advice. She always is on the move, always learning to improve and to self-advocate. And she always tries to instill stuff like that for me. So 10 years plus, we're still going.
Wow. That's great. So what is the best compliment you ever gotten?
Best compliment
someone ever gave you?
Wow. That best compliment someone has ever given me. I would say, I think it goes back to my business for Systemic Flow. I love to design programs, and a lot of my programs are very intentional about the people that we bring, who is being represented, what the kind of curriculum is all about. And so oftentimes I hear from parents and community leaders about how rich the programs are and how creative in terms of the way that I'm designing those programs are. And because of that, the impact that it's making in the community is so needed. And so I think a simple thank you for like bringing these kinds of programs to our community is the best compliment I've ever received before.
So let's say they are organizing an event for you to honor you, right? And then what would you think would be the reason they're giving you that reward, like in terms of your character? So what, if you are to think, what would be the reason they'll give you that reward?
Yeah, I would, going back to the 3 words that my friends, would use to describe me, the one being giving. I love giving back to my community, either through funding opportunities or I'm always signing up to volunteer. So whether it's backpack drives, whether it's, creating care packages for people who are homeless, you name it. I think my volunteerism and active kind of community engagement are the reasons why people would definitely perhaps give me an award. And then again, just going back to systemic flow, I think there is a true need in the community to build authentic programming that is for BIPOC girls. And so I think because of that uniqueness and because of our intentionality with who we recruit, I think that could also be another level as to perhaps getting some kind of recognition in the community.
So which of your accomplishment are you the proudest?
I would say building my business, Systemic Flow, because it has challenged me. It has challenged me in so many ways. First off, I wouldn't be doing this podcast without having started a company on my own. Again, as I mentioned, I was super shy and timid, and this gave me a vehicle to challenge myself, to say that, Jessica, you do have a story that people can relate to. And so as hard as it may be to be the front-facing person of an organization, I know that God gave me like this essential strength for me to overcome any of those fears. And I was able to do that through Systemic Flow. And so like before, Eddy, I kid you not, I was not even on social media and stuff. And that's just my own personal kind of tug of war that I have. And I will say that, now we're, building more equity, we're building more brand presence and things like that. And so I've been able to kind of understand a whole lot of what's going on in society through Systemic Flow.
Wow, thank you. So now, and this is like it's an interesting question. So let me say it like that. What do people misunderstand about you the most?
Funny enough, although I don't know. Sometimes the way I come off, no, actually, let me back up. So remember I mentioned that I'm goofy.
Yeah.
My friends say that I'm super goofy, and oftentimes when I'm goofy and when I'm soft-spoken, people think that it comes off as, not being confident in myself or not being intelligent, like when people kind of see you in a silly manner. But then the moment that I open my mouth and I say something real, people are like, "Who? What? She said that?" And so I think people just don't understand who I am and what I can bring to the table, because I have like those moments of goofiness and those awkwardness. And it's because of that, oftentimes, a lot of my friends, even though they say that I'm goofy, they know that I'm actually very serious and I'm very strict, whereas most people wouldn't really see that about me. So those are kind of some assumptions people have when they first see me.
All right, no problem. So let's take a quick break. So we're gonna take a quick break. This episode is brought to you by Dacius Facility Management. Dacius Facility Management, they will manage your property with your various services. Call them now, 617-227-0106, or go online at www.daciusfm.com, daciusfm.com.
What comes before making a smart decision? Choices. A smart choice is the best option, which is who we are. That's why our clients expect more from us and, in return, get more in everything we do. We understand the problem. That's why we thrive for excellence. We don't just create a winning culture. We aspire to be a smart choice, a voice for solutions. We believe in integrity, professionalism, and teamwork. Our passion is to bring results from our clients by working harder, smarter, and faster. As a team, we always deliver because we recognize your needs. Choosing smart influences us to be the best version of ourselves. That makes us different than other companies. It makes us confident in achieving our goals. It makes us who we are. And it makes us DFM, the smart choice.
Hey, we're back with Eddy Dacius with our special guest, Jessica Sanon. Jessica Sanon, she's here with us, and we heard about the story. We have her for more questions. So, Jessica, one thing I would like to ask you, what is the most important lesson you have learned over your career?
I think the most important lesson that I have learned throughout my career, I would definitely say Rome wasn't built in a day. It's very cliche, right? But I think when I started first building my business, or even when I was working, I had this immense pressure to make sure everything was lined up and everything was perfect. But as you know, it's not. And I think to remove that kind of internal pressure on yourself to over deliver is not necessary, or is not needed where you at right now. And so if I had to think back about, what I have learned over time, I would definitely say give yourself grace and give yourself time to really think through specific projects and project goals. Don't try to do it all in one day, and don't expect it to be, if it's successful the first time around, great. However you define success, great. For Systemic Flow, I was like, oh my gosh, we're going to have a program for 50 girls, and I kid you not, 2 people showed up. And,
wow, sorry to hear that. I know.
No, but honestly, it goes back to what I learned in church, right? Whenever 2 or 3, like if 2 people showed up, that means something is happening. Something is worth it for me to continue these programs. Yes. And so yes, I used to get so upset and mad when I'm like, we did everything right. We did the marketing right. We did the flyers right. Where could it have gone wrong? But instead of doing that, I'm like, you know what could we do better next time? Yes, 2 people showed up. Okay, let's try to get 10. Let's try to get 15. What else, what other kind of things should we do to try to overcome those types of setbacks? And so instead of getting upset and mad, you just think about what can you do next time?
Wow. Thank you for sharing. So let's kind of take a break in terms of okay, you said growing up you felt like you were socially awkward, right? And which is a great thing. So I have a question. Did you what was it a self assessment, or was it somebody give you feedback?
Combination. I think it was a combination of both. Super quiet. People would kind of sort of bully me, especially when I was in middle school. So you hear certain things, right? You hear certain things about who you are and how people see you. But then also sometimes when I have conversations with people, there were times where I didn't say anything at all and I would just stare at the person. And because I was staring, I was like, okay, I guess this is a really bad sign that I shouldn't be staring at you right now, right? Like this is the socially awkwardness for me. And I say this because I was comparing myself to how other people had conversations. Like literally people were just bouncing back and forth with each other, having conversations. There was never any silence going on. People were able to laugh and people were able to have fun. I have such a dry sense of humor, but I have a ton of friends who love comedy, who love interacting with people. So when I don't laugh at certain jokes, people are just like, oh my gosh, she just ruined it. She killed the vibe and all of that. So through those kinds of interactions, I realized okay, maybe I am a little socially awkward, or I'm just, unique in my own loving way.
No, makes sense. So now this is a chance for you, right? So you're not going to say your best friend's name, right? and you're gonna describe that person to me and to our audience. So you're gonna tell us about their quality, but you're not gonna say their name.
Oh,
Can you do
I'll
that?
do my best. I'll do my best. I'll do my
All
best.
right, go ahead.
Awesome. So my best friend is opposite of me. This person is very, very funny, humorous. So there are times where we would interact and they would try their best to kind of like teach me what it means when they have a joke.
Okay.
They are an ideas person. So I am an ideas person, but I also love to implement. This person is just like, I'm just good with ideas. You'll figure out how to implement. This person's very supportive, very reliable, dependable. This person I've known since I was in middle school, and we have recently kind of reconnected these past 5+7 years. And this person actually has been very supportive of my business and, always get my phone calls whenever I needed a hand. We like go out once a week to have food and things like that. So yeah, this person, you could say that yang and yin, what's it called? Yang and yin, whatever, like the opposite.
Yeah.
When we get together, it's like, wow, you would imagine like that we've known each other since birth.
All right, so this is the challenge. So they need to comment on the podcast. They can comment on Facebook, on YouTube. So that person need to put their name if they guess that's them. So like, let's switch to hot topic. Hot topic. This is a fun segment where we talk about important topics, question related to your career or your journey. Question our audience. They don't usually have a chance to ask people in your position. So let's go with hot topic. If you can hear the soundtrack, it's like it's a construction. So we're gonna go deep in terms of like finding out things. So how come somebody who describe herself as a used to be socially awkward, and then they have a business? How's that possible?
I ask myself that every single day since I started this business. But I think going back again, my business is very mission oriented. What I experienced in college of feeling like literally I was dumb, essentially, and that I was like literally the only Black Caribbean woman in my math classes. I don't want anyone to feel like because they may be the only one or because maybe they don't understand something at that moment, that they get discouraged to do what it is that they want to do. And so when I think about that kind of experience, it motivates me, right, to overcome that social awkwardness.
Yeah.
And over time, I'm realizing that leadership, there's not one set of leader. Before, I used to think that leaders are all about, they're the best communicators. They're the best people who can kind of like get people on board and invest. But honestly, the way that I am in terms of my leadership, communication will come at the end, but I think people, when they see how serious I am and what I can offer to the community, I don't need words to kind of talk about that. The work does it, So over time, I've challenged myself to like go to specific events. I challenged myself to enter into accelerator programs and things like that for people, so that I can kind of overcome that fear of speaking and engaging with people.
So let's go to you founding systemic flow. How was the process? Tell us about the name, or you choose the name. How did you start technically? What was the process?
Yeah, so when I got my MBA in nonprofit management at Brandeis University, so funny. Literally in my personal statement, I thought I had to go to school with a business idea. So I already started to plan out something without even really putting it to fruition. And so at Brandeis, we had a startup competition, and I applied. I applied. Originally, the business name was Code Switch because I wanted people to understand that, educational access and opportunity has to go beyond the classroom. It's not just looking at education, it's also looking at the cultural kind of differences, race, gender, you name it. And so I wanted it to be more about kind of that kind of holistic approach to how we're tackling educational inequities.
Yes.
So I definitely applied to do the startup, and part of the reason why I decided to do this, which was a year and a half into my program. So I didn't even, I went to school and I was like, okay, I just have this business idea. I'm not really going to pursue it. But there was like a memo that came out from a Google employee that said that women and men are psychologically different. And because of that, we wouldn't be in STEM. That kind of made me so furious to think that people were still thinking that way. And it brought back those memories that I had when I was in undergrad about being kind of inferior to others, although I never was, of course.
Okay.
And so because of that, I did a startup pitch at Brandeis University. The name Systemic Flow just came out, which was really great when we think about systemic barriers and things like that. Yep. So I was like, okay, why not? And we won second place, and it wasn't even the second place that really push me to start the business. There was a lot of people in the crowd, a lot of women who are like, I changed my major because of the exact problem that you have pointed out to, Jessica. So I realized that it wasn't just a me problem that was happening. So many women were changing their STEM related degrees because they were either feeling like they were the only ones in their class, or they didn't have, the kind of educational attainment needed to understand what was going on. And so fast forward, we do a lot of STEM enrichment programs for students 4th to 12th grade. We do a lot of math educational basis for high school students in particular. And we try to work with high schools and middle schools, you name it, to provide more foundational access in rigorous math courses that they need to have to take before going into school or going into their STEM fields. So it's been a process. It's been a journey. We've won a couple of pitch competitions. We've been in a couple of publications. So just super excited about how we have grown since 2017.
Wow. That's amazing and great story. So let's go with this. Is self-love selfish?
No.
All right, go ahead.
No.
You have the floor.
It's not. You talked about when we talk to the adults and how they make you feel bad when you say no.
Yeah.
Right. Because of that, I really thought self-love was selfish because, they made me feel like I wasn't giving them my best, or I wasn't doing enough for them. And then I realized the fact that people were putting me down meant that they didn't really love me the way that, I should have been loved, or that I love, you know what I'm saying? So self-love is not selfish, because at the end of the day, you don't want to have times where, you're struggling to, overcome whatever barriers that come across, your way. For example, as I mentioned, I had a mental breakdown and I had to be in psychiatric care, and, I had to choose myself moving forward and let people know that they can't stop me around anymore.
So there's this this definition I found, and it says self-love is a state of appreciation for oneself that grow from action that support our physical, psychological, and spiritual growth. Now, what is self-love? How can you define self-love?
For me, self-love is, to the point of the definition, I would say it's an appreciation of yourself. It is self-love. I see when I wake up and I look myself in the mirror, I'm smiling. That is self-love, right? Like being able to display that kind of excitement, that proudness, I would say. Self-love is like feeling proud or being proud of yourself, being proud that you're showing up who you are authentically, what have you, being proud to be a part of whatever family you're a part of, circles, communities, you name it, and not necessarily regretting who you are, moving forward.
So and thank you for your definition. about self-love, but I can say let me get back with you in terms of, okay, let's say it's like a thin line, because you put yourself first, you prioritize yourself. Is that a definition of selfish?
I mean, it depends on the context, and it depends on who you are.
Yeah.
For sure. I would say it's, what you're saying right now in terms of prioritizing you and who you are, it's definitely not selfish. Now, how much of that you do in terms of not really understanding your environment, the community, who's around you, surrounding you.
Yes.
When you don't kind of take account for that, and how maybe what you're prioritizing affects another person negatively, depending on what that is, that can sometimes, I feel like, can come out to be selfish. But I guess it really just depends on the context, for sure.
No, it makes sense, and I agree with you. I think you gave us a great definition, and one thing I can say is, if you're talking about self-love, you're talking about self-care, where you make sure you're okay. You make sure things like your mental, your physical, your spiritual are okay, because if you're not right, you cannot even help people. So that was great. So before we close this segment, that was Jessica Sanon with a hot topic. All right, we're back with Jessica Sanon. So we are on our last few minutes before we end this great podcast, great content, great conversation, learning more about you, Jessica. So let's talk about what do you do on your free time?
Yes, going back to the self-care moments, especially after I had, those types of experiences. Excuse me. Yeah, speaking of self-care, I would say I have started to play the violin. I picked that out.
What?
Yes, I try. I stopped for a couple of months, but I think I'm going to go back into it. So I definitely do that. I try to watch one theater show once a month. I love theater.
Okay.
I like musicals, so anything revolving the arts, I'll definitely do. I do write. So in my free time, when I can, I'll write a poem here and there, because I love poetry. And again, to your point of self-care, I actually have a therapist, so I see somebody once every other week, and they actually give me like homework assignments on like things that I should work or do.
Yep.
So with that kind of person who's keeping me accountable, I do a lot more in my free time than most.
No, that's great to hear, and I think that's very healthy. That's very progressive, and I think that should make you feel better and allow you to accomplish more. Let's talk about books. What books can you recommend us today?
Yeah, I would say the one that's on my list is called Hood Feminism by Nikki Kendall. One of the reasons why I enjoy this is because when you think of feminism, people always think it's a movement for women, but the people who typically benefit from feminism are white women. And so this dives in a little bit more to talking about how this feminism actually displays and how it affects women of color, in particular Black women.
Okay.
One other book is The Memo by Minda Harts. I'm still currently reading it, but again, to your our conversation earlier about career advice, this one has a ton of career advice on like what women of color need to do to secure a seat at the table, in corporate America. So those are my top two choices of things to read if I had to choose.
All right. So I'm assuming you're not a big fan of movies, but you talk about theater.
Yeah.
So any advice, any recommendation to our audience?
Yeah, I mean, I do watch a couple movies. You're so funny. It's like you knew me. One is a film. It's called Shoplifters. It's one of my favorites. I think this is an Asian family. I think it sits in Japan.
Okay.
But it's such a beautiful movie because it just shows people having a good time. Like this was the one where, you know, it was a family where grew up super poor and impoverished, but they made the best of their life.
Okay.
And so it was just a really great capture videos and memories of kind of the family and how they kind of overcame some of those barriers that they exhibited in Asia. So that was really great. And recently I watched Anastasia on Broadway. So that was a really great kind of show if you wanted to go see it. I think it's done this year, but you could definitely watch it for yourself.
All right, no problem. So, is there a question you wish I asked you today?
No, I think you asked all of the right questions.
All right, let's say let's talk about your top influencers in your life. Top 5. Just give me 5. Top 5 influencers in your life.
I don't have 5. I would say I just have the one, and it would just be my mom again. Just growing up, she was already business oriented before I even knew, and so she's definitely someone who I always aspired to be. And so she's definitely someone who influenced my life for sure.
All right, that was Jessica Sanon with us today. Last word for you, Jessica. Really appreciate having you today. Really appreciate that. Last word for you.
Thank you so much, Eddie, for having me here. It was really great to talk about my story and journey.
All right, so like I said, this is Eddy Dacius with Divine Purpose Podcast. We have Jessica Sanon. She's the founder and CEO of Systematic Flow. And any website you want to share, for numbers you want to share, so people, if they're interested to learn more about you, they can reach you.
Yeah, they can either go to systemicflow.com or jessicasanon.com. Spell my name, first and last name.com, and they'll be able to see any information on how to connect with me after this.
All right, that would be great. So, like I said, this is Eddy Dacius with Divine Purpose Podcast. This episode is brought to you by This Day Design and Dacius Facility Management. Dacius Facility Management, you can call them 617-237-0106 or go online www.daciusfm.com, daciusfm.com. Like I said, we had a great show. I learned about our special guest, Jessica Sanon, and she did a great job talking about her career, and we definitely had a blast. Thank you, Jessica. I appreciate it. Have a good day.
You too. Take care.